When this film came out, for both of you, what did you expect the reaction would be? Today it's an unusual film. In the 1970s, it feels like it would have been an even more unusual film.
We got a review from the New York Times, which was devastatingly negative. Comments like, why are they showing us all this flabby flesh?
Yes.
As if a woman in a movie had to be no older than 35, of course, which is kind of, I suppose, the Hollywood rule. But even worse than that, Edie wrote a letter in response and submitted it to the New York Times. And the letter is utterly beautiful, full of understanding. And a month later, they still hadn't published it, so I called the editor, whom I happen to know, and I said, are you planning to publish it? Have you received it? Oh, yeah, received it. No, we can't publish it. She's schizophrenic. It's difficult for people to draw the line between madness and eccentricity.
It didn't surprise me in a certain way that there was controversy. The bitterness and the vituperousness of some of the critics was really surprising. And I think I expected, and it was also true, that part of the criticism came from the idea of exploitation of Jackie Kennedy Onassis's relatives, and there was something about that connection that people felt we were trading on, their aunt and cousin's fame, that kind of thing. I don't think I expected people to feel, the sagging flesh problem, and I didn't expect people to really feel that Edie was crazy. I think she is, as Al said, completely eccentric, but clearly in control and dealing with things and dealing with her mother. And I was surprised at how people prevented that. But I used that as a way of not seeing what the film was really about, which was this really interesting relationship, which to me was like a larger than life version of, and a bigger version of many, many kinds of dependency relationships that people have with their spouses, with their friends, with their parents, with their kids, et cetera, et cetera.
And for some people, to be very open is a threatening kind of thing. But that's the beauty and the strength of their relationship and their character, that they would dare to be that open and take the chance of that kind of vulnerability.
When you show people a film that you've made about them, and I've had no exceptions to this, I'm sure people have, but I haven't, that people who let you into their lives and then you show them the film, they know themselves. They aren't surprised by what they see or shocked or even upset, and that was the case with the Beals. They felt that we had presented them as they were, and they recognized themselves, and that's been my experience with all the documentary subjects I've been involved with.
I can tell you also that they were so mature that and so level-headed that if Michael Moore had been filming them, they would have thrown him the hell out of the house in a minute. They were that much open because they trusted us, and having that kind of trust is a very sure sign of sanity and maturity.
Al, can you talk about your interaction with the Beals after the movie or in years later?
Well, one moment that I remember so well is that 2 years later, when Mrs. Beale was dying, Edie was with her at that moment, and she turned to her mother and said, "Is there something more you want to say?" And her mother turned to her and said, "There's nothing more to say. It's all in the film." That gives one a great deal of satisfaction.
I used to get cards through the years from Edie saying, "Time for another film."
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I got a letter from her. I got many letters, and one of them, at the top of the letter, she wrote, "Long overdue love letter." And then there was another letter where she wrote, "Dearest Al," followed by 50 Dearest Als, and finally a salutation at the end. "Dearest Al, Edie."
We can open this up for questions if you have. Yes, right there. Question was, when you first approached them to make a movie, what were you telling them? What was the concept?
I don't think there was anything to tell them. They were, I think they were kind of waiting for it all their lives.
Yeah.
Finally, as Arthur Miller put it so well, attention must be paid, which is kind of weird because they're recluses, apparently running away from things. But when they had the opportunity to be trusted and to be liked as much as we like them, they sensed that immediately. I guess they saw it in our eyes. I don't know what it was, but there was an immediate attraction.
Muffie, can you talk about piecing together the structure of this film in the edit room, because it's such a delicate subject?
The piecing together, which took forever, and which Albert and David were completely amazing about, just leaving us to never saying, why is this taking so long, was a matter of trying, since they didn't change, trying to figure out a way to create a change in the audience of how you feel about them. And it took us a long time to figure that out. Interestingly, the last scene where they fight and Edie cries, which we called Pink Day, was one of the first scenes to be cut. And even though it didn't happen at the end of the film, toward the end of the filming, we always knew that was in some way a climactic scene, as much as we were going to get of one. And so the rest of the film was kind of building, trying to get you to understand what was going on in a kind of deep way in that Pink Day scene.
We had some particularly successful days of filming, and when those days occurred, they usually initiated it. We would all shout together, "It's been a banner day."
Yeah.
So they knew when things were right and when things were wrong.
Question is, was it ever too intense in there that you thought, like, maybe we shouldn't be filming this? Or
there are many times when things are that delicate enough where you have to make that decision. But it's so important to get it when it's proper to, even though there's a great deal of hurtfulness, and it's between those two extremes of being so careful that you miss something that they would like as well, and going the other direction and exploiting them.
I'll also say, from watching all the footage and listening to all the wild sound, that I would say that the Beals tired the Maysles out just as much as the other way around. David would often, you guys would go off and rest in the car, and David would leave the mic on the table that was between the two beds. And so we got a lot of discussion and a lot of sound, and even constructed some scenes around that wild sound that was got, well, after the Beals had exhausted the Maysles.
we were talking before the film about other things that were happening at the Maysles Brothers studios in the 1970s. Lots of people know Gimme Shelter and Grey Gardens from this era, but you were being very active making commercials, making other films. Muffie, can you talk about like what it was like working at Maysles Studios, what all was going on there in the 70s?
To me, it was like this amazing place because it was so casual and friendly and kind of everybody worked hard, but it was easygoing, and it was very much like a family. And I think that probably continues to be that way.
Yeah. Well, when you make a film like Grey Gardens or Salesman, you have a special devotion to the people in the film, and they become your friends forever. And I was asked recently if anybody that I ever filmed that became unfriendly or whatever, and I can't remember that. And so many of them I've kept up to date with. Salesman, which is now, what,
45?
40 years ago. One of the salesmen just visited me just the other day, and two of them have passed away, but during their life it was a constant communication. And part of that is that we treated them so well as subjects in the film.
Well, we look forward to digging more into that past. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you especially to Albert Maysles and Muffie Meyer.